An overheating camera is a deal breaker. I don't care how many fancy specs you pack into it. If the camera doesn't stay on for the length of the job, then it's useless. And that's why we've got to talk about the S1II and overheating. You see, I switched to Lumix from Sony because I was fed up of my A7IVs overheating midway through a podcast shoot. When I was filming in 1080p in the all-I codec on the A7IVs, I had no issues with overheating. Then one day a client suggested they wanted 4K. So I switched it over to 4K and overheating. So I switched. You see, switching to me isn't a big deal. These things are simply tools. And if a tool can't do the job, then you get the right tool for the job. It's not about emotions. It's not about being a fanboy. It's about doing the job. So I went out, sold my A7IVs, purchased two Lumix S1II. They are rock solid. They have been rock solid for me. Overheating hasn't even come into the equation. And I love that. I love that I don't have to worry about whether my camera is going to overheat or not. So recently, after saving a bit of money, I went out and bought the S1II. After seeing its specs and having used the Lumix system now, I was sold. I thought, perfect, this is going to be an upgrade on my S1IIX cameras. So I sold one of those and I purchased this. So we need to talk about the overheating. Okay, let's talk facts. The S1II is pushing some serious specs. We're talking 6K internal, ProRes, RAW, high frame rates, high dynamic range, all within a relatively small, compact, mirrorless body. That's a lot of heat for a small body to handle. And whilst these cameras do have internal built-in fans, people have experienced some overheating issues. But here's the thing. It depends on how you use them. It depends on your particular use case. Now for me, I shoot YouTube talking head videos like this. I shoot long form podcasts, and by that I mean 60 minutes plus. And I shoot corporate events where the speaker may be talking again for 90 minutes plus. So the camera has to stay on for the length of the job. But the other thing to consider is I'm always indoors. It's in a temperature controlled environment. Now, the only place I don't control the temperature is in this studio here, because this is my home. This is a spare room in my home. And here in the UK, air conditioning is just not a thing that many people have because we don't need it most of the year. So right now in the middle of summer, it's July as I'm recording this, it's 30 degrees Celsius out there and it's hot. It gets hot. I've got multiple cameras on. I can have lights going on. I've got my NAS in the corner over there. All of these things are generating heat. Now, so far, I haven't had the chance to take this out on a corporate shoot. I've only used it here in the studio, but it has been over the last few months, where, as I said, it has been relatively warm here in the UK, unnaturally warm for this time of year. And guess what? It's not overheated on me. Not once. I've not even had the warning light come on. And here's why. The first thing I do when I purchase a new camera is look to power it externally. Like I said, I'm always in a studio environment. I'm always somewhere where I'm near a mains power outlet, or I can use VMAP batteries. And that's where the Panasonic DMW DCC18 comes in. You see, it's a dummy battery to USB-C, and that means I can power these cameras via a USB-C power adapter or via a dummy battery which has a USB-C output. Just by doing that, I'm removing the single biggest source of heat from inside the camera to outside. The next biggest culprit for heat is internal recording. You see, one of the reasons I opted for the Lumix and not an FX3 or an FX30 was because they had external SSD recording. Now, my thought process at the time wasn't heat management. It was removing the worry of having to change SD cards constantly on an all-day shoot, potentially 2 days when I'm doing corporate work. But recording internally generates a lot of heat. Record externally, you remove that. So with my Lumix cameras, I pretty much 95% of the time am recording to an external SSD, except for videos like this. And right now I'm shooting on the Lumix S9, which doesn't have external SSD recording, so I'm using the internal SD card. Now, shout out to Josh Cameron, who did a really good deep dive on looking at the different media types and which ones overheat. And what he found was that CF Express cards in the S1II series definitely generate more heat and therefore cause overheating issues. And he also found that when you record to external SSDs, you get the best results when it comes to heat management. And then finally, I always leave the screen flipped out and away from the body just to allow more air to circulate around the camera. And like I said, setting up my cameras in this way, I've had zero issues with either the S1IIX or the S1II. Now, I'm usually shooting in 4K. I'm using the 422 10-bit color option, and sometimes I'm using the all-I codec, which is the highest codec available in these cameras for 4K. And like I said, no overheating issues whatsoever. Now, if you're outside shooting in direct sunlight in 30 degrees heat, then yeah, it's going to overheat. But so will your mobile phone. That's not a fault. That's physics. But if you're like me and shooting indoors in a relatively temperature-controlled environment, doing long form, and you've taken some steps to make sure that the cameras don't overheat, then you should be fine. This isn't a lab test. I'm not trying to make my cameras overheat just for clicks. I use my cameras professionally to earn a living. Therefore, I need gear that works. And if it doesn't, I'll find a tool that does. And for the jobs that I do, well, the Lumix S1II works just fine. And when that changes, I'll switch. I'll find a better tool. Let me know what you think. Are you using a similar workflow? Have you had different results when it comes to overheating? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one.